Oh, should we add the dog to our interview?
Yeah.
Soften things?
Yes. Really?
Should we introduce the dog first?
I'm going to have the best interview.
That's man can't control.
Yeah, we're going to do an interview together. This will be great. You can answer all the hard questions.
All right. Michelle Ching, CEO and founder of Literator, and you just added another which is amazing. And let's just start there. How does that feel? How does that feel?
After change, be in that space is me kind of self-actualizing one of those beliefs that I have about all of us, that we have the capacity to make great change once we understand our own agency. So that feels really good.
Awesome. And can you talk a little bit about kind of the key moments and experiences in your life that kind of led you to this moment today?
There's so many. I think a lot back to my own educational experience. I was a student in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and my family had landed in the Midwest after coming to America as refugees. And I remember trying to find my place and my sense of identity in the Midwest, and part of that was, within the education system. And I found that actually to be one of the most challenging things. I found that in the space of the school building, I wasn't challenged or pushed, and I also saw that that was the same way for my classmates, and that was really disheartening for me, because I saw that there was a lot of potential being wasted. And I still remember being 14 and sitting in a study hall that was a placeholder for a class because teachers just didn't show up that day, writing furiously in my journal, like, who is letting this happen? Like, why is this neglect here in place of our education? I would run for office. I thought I decided that if I was going to do that, I needed to be in education, which is community, and 9-year-old. They were really practical. In the Silicon Valley, where there's a magical, if that magic is happening in all these other spaces and all these, and so that was kind of a catalyst moment. Promotes Julian. A lesson plan at 6 in the morning tomorrow, but I also maybe have a startup now. I don't know what that means. And I really explored that. I kind of leaned into this question of whether or not that would be my path. And I remember still sitting in a meeting with the group of engineers that could have possibly worked with me on making this a reality, and hearing one of them say, I know we're supposed to care about equity in education, having him put it in air quotes made me realize there was a real disconnect in this space of ed tech, and I had put a lot of hope and weight into what ed tech innovations could do for education and for the students and for my classroom, and all of a sudden here I am trying to advocate for my own students, to advocate for myself as a teacher in the classroom, and seeing that if I didn't participate as a founder, as a leader in shaping this venture, there would remain a disconnect, and that was not something that I was okay with. And similarly, you know, running for office would mean that I was entering into a space where you don't see a lot of women of color, you don't see a lot of women or people who are advocating for, on behalf of really, you know, social justice issues or issues around equity. And I saw Silicon Valley and the startup space as being another one of those places that was lacking in that perspective. And I saw it as an opportunity to enter in and hold space, sit at tables, and speak on these platforms. So,
and as you know, made that brave decision to sort of take that risk, did you in that network?
I would not be here today if it weren't for my family. When I first started, I got pushed. Classroom teacher, what could you possibly, you know, how could you make that exit and make this really happen? Is your skin really in the game if you're not really leaving the classroom? And so I'd ask other people how they had left the classroom, how they made this possible, and I'd hear things like, well, I have a trust fund, you know, or I have a really, really in me, and that took me in when I realized I would no longer be able to pay rent in the Bay Area, she says all the time, you and then I called my dad today to tell him about Forbes, and he was like, 4 of what? What? And understand what I'm doing,
Right.
but they have this blind faith that I'm doing something that's really important, that I'm really passionate about, and that's all that matters to them. And so I'm
and out in this kind of crowded
and I think teachers creating the culture and make that and the you know they can actually teach in that moment. How of trying to prep and create things using their own resources and funds and replace that with something that is simple and easy to use and a joy to use, hopefully, and that solves their problems so that they can actually go back to what's really important, which is being present with their students.
So I asked this question of one of our entrepreneurs last night, and so I'm asking of you as well. What has been your worst day as an entrepreneur?
I can tell you one of my worst days as an entrepreneur was actually hustling to get to a meeting. I was on the train in San Francisco, and I get a text message from one of my close friends who also did Teach for America, and he said, "Hey, are you going to Marlene's wedding?" I was like, yeah, I'm totally going to be there. It's like, well, they're about to say their vows. Oh. And I realized that like one of my closest friends was getting married, and it was very important to me to be a part of that experience. And I was just so overwhelmed, and I had so many priorities, and I wasn't able to balance things that were very important to me, my community, my people, and this work. And I realized at that point I needed to do a little bit more to make sure that I'm balancing all of
I think that's a theme that has emerged a lot throughout the last couple of days, is especially among this group of entrepreneurs, is how you do achieve that balance in your life. So what, and we just had this question at our dinner topic, but what are your grounding strategies?
I'm laughing.
Share that.
I'm laughing because I feel like what I'd like to say is probably will get bleeped out, but I'm Zen AF. I am the happiest I've ever been, and I think a lot of that has to do with this feels like a privilege to me, to be able to solve a problem that's very intimate and real for me, and that affects real people for reasons, and to have a scale and impact on something that like feels bigger than even just the problem of literacy, that it could then ripple effect into other things. Like, that seems like a gift. It seems like a gift that every single day I get to wake up and have a choice about how I exercise my time and my energy, and where I focus my love and appreciation of the world, and I never take that for granted as well. But I also see this opportunity of building a business as experimenting and failure all the time, and that failure feels like a luxury. This failure of learning from those mistakes constantly, it's such a powerful thing to be able to fail and then to get back up and then to make something out of that failure, or learn something from it and move from that. And so every single day it just feels like another opportunity to learn all these things and to experience this life. And I think part of that really grounds me, right? Knowing that no matter what, I'm already so grateful for this journey and for what I'm able to do. And knowing that, like, even if Literator could not scale, and I don't believe that it won't, I have a lot of faith in what we're building. Right now we're already serving so many students and so many schools, and that in itself, coming out of my classroom and coming out of, just my personal need and emerging and becoming something that is meaningful to other teachers, like, I already feel like very, very fortunate that way.
That's awesome. So speaking of learning, so we've been deep in the lab for the last 2 days. Is there a particular insight or idea that's emerged over the last 2 days that's held real resonance for you?
Ooh, I feel like that's putting me on the spot now. Do you want to take this, Bailey? I've learned in the last couple of days. There's definitely something I heard yesterday. I'll just speak to things that I definitely have been hearing and thinking about. Was actually the owner of this hotel said that a quote that resonated or stuck with him was that education wasn't about knowledge, but it was about action. And I think one of the things that I'm doing here is like learning so fast and so quickly, but also learning that I know more than I thought I did. To be able to come and be probably one of the youngest people in this space, and to feel very green and to like deal with things like imposter syndrome or what have you, but then enter a room and be like, I know the answers to these questions. I can think of how to solve this. I can navigate this problem space more than and because with experience and with some confidence, I think that's something I've learned. I've learned to have a little bit more confidence and to start asking for a little bit more out of the universe. I asked the universe for Forbes and I got it, so keep it going.
So if you had advice for other young people starting out as entrepreneurs,
everyone that you think could help you to help you, because you'd be amazed, and know what you're asking and why you're asking it first, and then do it.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And also just appreciate all of it.
Great. Well, I think that's it. Thank you so
Thank
much,
you.
Michelle, for joining us.